Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and this one's actually simultaneously complicated and simple, right? The complicated part is this does not take place in one dimension, it takes place in two dimensions. One of them is Earth K, which is where 99.9% of our games have taken place over the years. The other dimension, though, is Earth H, which we've been talking about a lot recently. This is kind of the culmination of that. And the difference between the two is kind of hard for me to articulate. I'm going to see if I can do better than my last try. When I originally bought DC Heroes in 1985 and started playing this game in 1985, on the box, it said, be part of the legend. And I mentioned this in one of my recent videos. I think that phrase is open to interpretation. I would love to hear what you, the listener, what does that phrase mean to you? Like, that'd be a cool thing to put in the comments. But to me, when it said be part of the legend, I thought they were speaking specifically to me, right? To whoever the reader is. And that it was inviting us readers to make an original character of some sort and to insert that person into the DC universe. And they were going to have a say in things, right? That they were going to be important. And by extension, what I thought was the goal there was that our original characters were therefore going to be the main characters. And I love the DC universe. I want to be part of the DC universe, right? I love the DC characters, but I thought it was a story about the original characters as main characters, which would then make the actual DC heroes themselves sort of relegated to supporting cast. Now, maybe we should have done that. Maybe we should not have done that. But for better or worse, that's how we always treated Earth K. So when I made a guy named Powerhouse, everything was kind of told from his perspective. He was the main guy. And if Superman got mentioned at all, we looked at it in terms of, well, how does Superman relate to Powerhouse? So if it was a question of Powerhouse wants to grow up and be like Superman, Powerhouse is still kind of the focal point of that idea, right? And Superman is secondary to him. But that philosophy over the years, and the majority of my players, and maybe I influenced them, but the majority of my players thought that was the assignment. And so everything that ever happened on Earth K sort of sprung forth from that philosophy, right? So we then decided to make Earth H, and we had intended for the H to stand for heroes, as in the focus is on the existing heroes, right? So Superman is the main character. And we will tell stories on Earth H that are what we would like to see happen with characters like Superman and Spider-Man and what is best for them. And either our original characters don't exist on Earth H, or if they do, they have now been relegated to supporting cast and they are now unimportant. And the spotlight is back on the famous characters everybody's familiar with. That was what I had intended to be the difference between these two worlds, right? Someone pointed out in the comments section, though, that that also meant the H kind of stands for happy. Earth H is a world where the heroes always kind of win. We have, admittedly, because it's not where I intend to be running games a whole lot, right? So we admittedly kind of reinserted the idea of plot convenience back into that DC universe. And that sounds like I'm insulting DC. I'm really not trying to single anybody out. Like, for me as a game master, when I watch a TV show or a movie or whatever, I can't shut that off. And when I'm watching stuff, I'm always thinking about how many APs is this? What would you have to roll for that, right? And that is just how fiction works. Fiction is full of plot conveniences. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's worse than other times, but I'm not singling anybody out. And the thing is, on Earth K, when we completely removed plot convenience, it led to a lot more tragedy. And like I said, Earth H is kind of the world we wanted to see. It was our ideal setting for our take on DC and Marvel characters. And so the a little bit of plot convenience then gives you more happy endings. That's sort of what that was about. But so that's the difference between these two worlds. And then in this story, it was about the Kent family from Earth K interacting with the Kent family from Earth H. And a big part of it was characters meeting their variant. So there's multiple Supermen from multiple Earths in this story. And so there is a lot of potential for confusion. So I'm going to real quickly break down a couple things, okay? And I'm sorry that they're redundant, but I just want to make sure I'm not confusing people. And I feel like this adventure sure could do that, right? So what we said was on Earth H and Earth K, in both of those worlds, Superman started out in 1938. And we use real time instead of comic book time. So in both of those worlds, um, they were active during the World War II years. Um, at After World War II was over, they both married Lois Lane. Now here's going to be a difference. There's an old story where Lois Lane became Superwoman because Lex Luthor invented this device that can basically turn a human into a Kryptonian. It was a big machine that took up a whole room. We got a video about it on my channel. If you want a link to the video, let me know and I'll drop a link. But so the first difference is that on Earth H, Lois was exposed to that machine before she ever had any kids. On Earth K, she was exposed a little later on. The difference then is that on both Earths, both Lois Kents give birth to the oldest son of each Superman. And these two guys who would be, you know, they look alike, they'd be played by the same actor. If I had my way in a perfect world, we'd somehow have them played by Christopher Reeve, you know. But at any rate, um, the one whose mom is Superwoman would have powers at the same level as his dad, right? But the one from Earth K, where she was not yet exposed to stuff, would only be half as strong as his dad. In both worlds, we're saying this is the Clark Kent Jr. that, like, we were inspired by some 70s comic books called the Super Sons, and they were about Clark Kent Jr. and Bruce Wayne Jr. And they were kind of going around the country having adventures and, you know, stuff like that. And in the end of those comics, they said it was not real, you know, it was an imaginary story. We ignore that part of it and we say, no, no, no. And our for our game, we're saying they're real. Furthermore, on Earth H and Earth K, there's a big crisis event in the mid 1980s. And on Earth K, the original Superman, Clark Sr., is exposed to gold kryptonite, loses his powers, right? So his half-human son, who's only half as strong as he was, took over, and that represented the post-crisis Superman. Because if you're familiar with DC Comics, you're well aware post-crisis Superman is far weaker than the pre-crisis Superman was, right? Well, on Earth H, which again is kind of happier, so on and so forth, things tend to work out a little more for the heroes on that Earth. Superman was not exposed to gold kryptonite in the crisis. So it wasn't that he was replaced by his son. It was that now there are two Supermen fighting crime on Earth H, and they are both fully powered going into the 90s. So the next moment worth mentioning is Doomsday, right? On Earth K, Doomsday killed Clark Jr., and we never brought him back. We kept it that way. On Earth H, Doomsday failed because he got beaten down by two fully powered pre-crisis Supermen, right? Superman Senior and Superman Junior. So they beat down Doomsday, they win, and roughly 10 years after that, in both worlds, um, Doomsday fights Imperiex in an event called Our Worlds at War, and both Doomsdays are disintegrated by the villain Imperiex. So the original Golden Age Clark and the original Golden Age Lois, right? Superman 1 and all that, his wife. In both worlds, and this is after both Loises have become Superwoman, in both worlds they have a daughter. So the daughter is fully powered. And in so we have the Lara, and she's named after Superman's biological mother from Krypton, right? Lara Kent of Earth K, and then there's Lara Kent of Earth H. And because the parents used to be investigative journalists, both daughters become investigative journalists. And by the way, I'll let you Google Lara Kent. Um, she makes actually multiple appearances in the comics and multiple continuities. That's Superman's daughter from Injustice. Um, she appears in some regular DC comics from, I want to say, around the year 2000, a little after, maybe like 2005. I want to say there was one called Superman the 10-Cent Adventure. I think she's the one that appears in there. And then she's also in the sequel to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. I think it was called Dark Knight Strikes Again. Honestly, not a very good story, but at any rate, she is the daughter of Superman in there too. And I just kind of like the idea of naming her after Superman's mom. So, and by the way, also she would be sort of like, and I'm painting in broad strokes here. She's probably like in high school around 2000, 2005, something like that. Giving you like sort of a general ballpark of what her age would be like. So now we're talking about her in 2024. And on Earth K, that Lara married a guy named John. And if you follow my channel, you've heard me mention John Redbridge a million times. Going back to that original thing where I thought our original characters were supposed to be important, right? John Redbridge is one of my original characters. But the name Redbridge itself is not at all important. When I was younger, a lot of the games we played were in the living room of the house that I was growing up in. And my grandma had this painting that hung over her couch in the downstairs living room, and it reminded her of her childhood. She was very nostalgic for this painting. After she passed away, I got the painting actually, and now it's over my couch in my living room. But at any rate, it is maybe like 6 or 7 feet long, and it's like 2 or 3 feet tall, and it's a painting of a covered bridge from maybe like late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that. And It's like a covered bridge in the summer, and there's a couple of kids in the painting, and I think they're walking over because it's a bridge over a stream, and they're going to go fishing, or they're going to play in the water to cool off, or something like that, right? I have no idea what the name of this painting is. It looks to me like it would have a name like Summertime Memories or something along those lines. But I associate this painting with home because everywhere I've ever lived, that has hung over the couch, right? So it has meaning to me. And when I was younger, and we had to name John Redbridge, and I'm literally looking around the room for something to give me an idea. I saw that painting of a red bridge. That's where the name comes from, then, right? So, and John, by the way, was just the most generic name ever, right? So, and we've mentioned before on the channel, there are a million John Redbridges because they have the split power, which is sort of like multiple man from Marvel, and like GURPS. The terminology they use in GURPS Supers is when once you split, they refer to these new beings that have sprung into existence as dupes, which is short for duplicates. Um, the way we run it in our game is when that happens, that first moment they exist, they are all the same guy. They are completely identical, like mentally and emotionally, right? But the more individual experiences they have, the more memories they form, they are slowly growing apart and they're becoming different, right? So each one is his own man. And I've kind of glossed over this in previous videos, but there's no great way for them to differentiate themselves from each other. So we decided that one of the things they would do is because their own name is completely arbitrary and doesn't matter, when they meet a girl and when they get married. So, for instance, one of them marries the Lara Kent of Earth K, right? And if you look at the name Kent in the context of the game world, that means something, right? It means you are related to the great Clark Kent, right? The original Superman, kind of the father of all superheroes in a way. That's a big deal. It's almost like marrying into royalty in a way. So we decided he would take her name. And so then he is named John Kent. And I don't want this to confuse anybody because in DC Comics, there's a character named John Kent. These are completely different guys. So maybe I'll just refer to him as Lara's husband from Earth K or something like that, right? So, okay, that's the Lara from Earth K. Now, here's the thing. The John Redbridge from Earth K, like I just said, has the ability to split and turn into a bunch of guys and so on and so forth. The John Redbridge from Earth H can't do that. Or at the very least, he has not done that. And again, it's because the sort of the prime directive of Earth H is for original characters to not be hogging the spotlight, right? So we made the John Redbridge of Earth H as a White Lantern, and then we've kind of said he sort of wandered off and became unimportant. So, and he's married. He married that world's Morrigan. So he's not available. And we went the route of assuming that the Lara Kent of Earth H is then single and has no kids, right? So I left a thing out too. Um, on Earth H and on Earth K around 2004-ish, because we used the date that Christopher Reeve passed away. And I have a video about that too. We talk about that in greater detail. We had a big debate, and what we had decided in the end was to say that that was the date that the Earth K Superman passed away. And we based that on the death of the Superman of Earth 2 from the actual comic books, right? Well, so that happened on Earth K, but now we've also established that did not happen on Earth H. So the original Superman, Clark the First, is still alive on Earth H. So the reason I'm bringing this all up is the original idea that was that this game was going to take place on Thanksgiving, and that the Superman, the oldest Superman the First, right, from Earth H, would not only invite his own children and stuff to Thanksgiving, his own family, but that he would invite characters from Earth K because his counterpart there was dead. And so he was going to say basically the Kent farm is big enough for everybody. Let's have a Thanksgiving for both Kent families, right? And I thought that was kind of a neat idea, the sort of interdimensional Thanksgiving idea. But then we also, another thing we wanted to deal with was the idea of the election, and we wanted to make sure this happened before the election. So, but we thought setting it Thanksgiving from an entire year earlier would be too much. So instead, we decided to change it from Thanksgiving to a barbecue on the Kent farm on Earth H on the 4th of July. So my wife was playing the married Laura Kent of Earth K. Her cousin Jesse came over and played the single Laura Kent of Earth H. And then in real life, Jesse's husband played the post-crisis Superman, aka Clark Jr. of Earth H. Right? So we get all these characters together. Everybody did a fantastic job of being totally in character. Um, and so one of the things that got played out was, for instance, my wife's character, because in her dimension, her father died back in 2004, right? So she goes over this other dimension, and this guy looks like her dad, sounds like her dad, so on and so forth. So she's like, I just want to give this guy a hug. And part of that was my wife's father in real life is no longer with us. I don't want to go off on a big tangent about it, but I actually found him on Thanksgiving. He had passed away about 2 days before Thanksgiving, and we did not know it. And before he passed away, he was saying he would need a ride. He was old and didn't really drive anymore and stuff like that. And I went to his apartment building to bring him to Thanksgiving, and uh, he was not coming out to the car, and yeah, so we found him. And at any rate, um, so my wife had said if she had the ability to go to another Earth and hug her father's counterpart, like she would in a heartbeat. So like that struck a chord for her, right? And I've said that too. My mom is no longer with us. I would go spend a Thanksgiving with my mom's variant if I could, and I bet different people are going to weigh in differently on that idea. There's going to be a lot of people who are first of all going to say it's not actually your mom, and you're right. You're right. I would agree with you that it would not actually be my mom. In the same sense, the John Redbridges are not all the same guy, right? Different experiences are going to make them a little bit different, but I would still do it. You know what I mean? So, so at any rate, there was that. That was sort of the first layer was so like my wife's character was hugging her dad's variant. She was also hugging her older brother's variant that from her point of view, her older brother died fighting Doomsday and the whole Death of Superman storyline. So, that was another thing. And the next kind of layer of what happens is we find out that the older brother I just mentioned, the variant of the guy who died fighting Doomsday on Earth K, is running for president in his world. And I want to say this really quick too. And I haven't had anybody mention it to me yet. I just kind of figure it's coming. So I want to head this off at the pass. I don't want anybody to see anything I'm doing where I'm talking about the fictional presidency of Earth H and the fictional presidency of Earth K. I don't want you to assume this character represents this person from the real world. You know what I mean? I really am not doing that. I'll tell you exactly what I am doing. We've had players who have wanted to do things to change the game world, and for various reasons, I've told them no. I've said, I don't want you going there. I don't want it to differ drastically from the real world, you know? And my son actually had a really compelling argument recently for why gaming is then pointless if that's the case. And so one of the reasons we've been doing Earth H is for that to then be the thing that's the most like um the real world basically, right? You know what? This is going to be a strange example, but I think this is pretty good. If you're familiar with psychology and there's id, ego, and superego, right? If those were dimensions, they would be Earth H, Earth K, and the Terran Empire. So in the Terran Empire would be kind of like the id, where they go more unchecked. They just go, balls out, do whatever they want. We've talked about that in old videos too. But then Earth H is kind of the opposite extreme where Earth H is going to be more anchored to the real world. You know what I mean? That's kind of why I'm doing that, is because there is a demand with certain players and certain listeners where they want things that are familiar, right? So Earth H is going to be the more familiar thing. But Earth K now, I'm kind of taking off the leash a little and saying, go ahead and get a little weird with it. And hopefully, because the players have seen Earth H and there's things they like about it, there's things they don't like about it. They've seen Earth K and there's things they like about it, there's things they don't like about it. So hopefully, or I meant to say the Terran Empire, I'm sorry. There's things about the Terran Empire they don't like. So I'm hoping Earth K, which is the main game world, is going to strike a nice balance between these two, right? But so with the Terran Empire, John Redbridge is the emperor running everything. We're not going to do that on Earth K. But so, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so it's the 4th of July. They're hanging out, they're grilling out. This is the Golden Age Superman at the grill. Um, and we went the route, first of all, and this is probably going to ruffle some feathers, I guess, but to me, it made perfect sense. I read a story once where they gave Superman some kind of, I think this was Superman Rebirth. I hated Superman Rebirth. And one of the reasons I hated it was because I grew up on a farm and I live in farm country, right? Like I literally live in Amish country. Three-fourths of my neighbors for miles and miles and miles are Amish. And none of them are vegan, right? It's just not a farmer thing. And so I read this thing where there was like a vegan art author or whatever, a vegan writer, really wanted Superman to be vegan. I don't feel like we should be inserting ourselves into the famous characters. Instead, I think you should say, well, here's the deal with the character, right? What is what would be true to that? And I think that if he grew up on a farm, especially in the Depression era for like a golden age Superman, he absolutely is going to eat meat, right? Um, and like I've seen old stuff where he's eaten cheeseburgers and diners and stuff, whether it's the Christopher Reeve movies or the Brave and the Bold cartoon or whatever. Um, I have a very specific idea of Superman. And so I thought the most and again, like I guess I didn't say this. I was thinking it, but I didn't say it out loud. If you look at the Fortress of Solitude, and the stuff that's in it, right? And you think about the fortune, and I'm talking about specifically the Silver Age Fortress of Solitude, which, by the way, me and my son are making this right now in Blender. And we started with the Titanic. We made the Titanic in Blender, and now we're building the fortress around it. And we're using the diagrams and stuff from first edition DC Heroes, where it's like, all right, here's the three floors, which we call the horseshoes, because they kind of wrap around the central trophy room, which is almost this tall, almost like half of a football shaped thing in a way. Um, but at any rate, we're making it, and we're going to use that for some of the visuals for stuff, that has yet to come out yet. But I've always loved the Silver Age Fortress of Solitude. I just think it is so awesome. I love all the weird crap that Superman keeps in there, and I feel like that is a really good indicator of what his personality is like. You know what I mean? And so I loved the idea of Superman grilling out, and we said that he and his sons, because he has sons on Earth H, he past tense had sons on Earth K, but they died, and again, we have videos about that. So we said they went to another planet where there was something akin to cows, right? So they have these steaks, like alien steaks that are like massive and purple. And then he's grilling this on this like oversized grill. And we called it the super grill because we just thought that, again, that was like a very Silver Age kind of an idea. And I thought it was kind of funny and kind of cool. And like, yeah, man, he would. Like, why would he not? Just everything is sort of bigger and better with Superman. So so we were doing that. Everybody was eating oversized steaks. Everybody was interacting with everybody else. It was like a really good time. For the Earth K characters who have had it rough, because I felt like for 40 years of running the game, my job is to give my players adversities to overcome, right? That was not my philosophy with Earth H. So the Earth H guys have had it easy by contrast. But then there were some things though. So for instance, the Lara of Earth H sees how in love her counterpart is with her husband, and that they have a son together. And she's like, oh, like maybe I should go find him in my world and marry him. And then she's like, oh, wait, no, he married somebody else. And so for that Lara, because there was sort of like there was a lot of fun stuff that was like at the forefront, and it was obvious, and like everybody playing the game was having like a good time. They were talking about stuff like frisbee with crypto, things like that. So that is like on the surface, but then if you go below the surface of this game, there were a lot of these bittersweet moments. And so the obvious one, I guess, is not everybody's variant is alive, right? So the characters feel like they're getting a second chance to spend time with like loved ones, right? That had passed away. That's an obvious one. But one of them that's maybe not as obvious is then some of them are like, oh, my counterpart got married and I'm not married. And then they're like, maybe I should look up their spouse's counterpart, like on my phone, and see what that person's into. And it's like, oh, they're in a relationship. Huh. And so then the characters that seem like they've had it really good, multiple ones of those characters are like, oh, like maybe there is nobody out there for me. Maybe the reason I'm the age I am, because like I said, the two Laras were like in high school around the year 2000. It's like 25 years ago now, right? So the Lara of Earth H feels like she should have gotten married by now, and she's not married, never has been. So she's like, well, man, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm never going to get married. So she's kind of sad about that. And I thought that was cool. That there was sort of like this ebb and a flow emotionally throughout the whole game between kind of like, like I said, Frisbee with crypto was like a really fun thing. We rolled dice for that. Um, we kind of, I have a dog in real life named Pepper. She kind of looks like the classic crypto from DC Comics, but she's black instead of white. And my dog is incredibly smart. My dog, this sounds like I'm full of it. Hopefully, my players can say something in the comments here and back me up. Pepper understands every single word in the English language. You can just talk to her like a normal person. She doesn't need certain special commands or whatever. She completely understands English. She's very, very smart. If you tell her to go sit in a certain chair, she knows exactly what chair you want her to go sit down in, and so on and so forth. And she is so loving. Um, but at any rate, we kind of like stuff Pepper was doing, we would then say that was what crypto was doing. You know what I mean? So like we came as close as we could to actually having Pepper play crypto. So then we had it was actually just a lid off of a plastic I don't know what you call it, like the cheese puffs, the round cheese puffs coming in. My son loves those things. But when we were playing the game, we were throwing that lid around because my kid ate all those cheese puffs. And so then Pepper was catching it and all that. So that was sort of as we were talking and playing, we're doing that with the dog. So then we're saying that's what crypto is doing. Does that make sense? Hopefully you guys are getting what we're saying. Um, but it was cool. It was there was happy moments and there were kind of sadder moments. And it was nice because going into it, it seemed like all the Earth K characters would be depressed and kind of say like, well, our world sucks. Or another thing I didn't want was for my players to say, well, holy crap, dude, like why are we even playing the game on Earth K if we could be playing an Earth H game instead? But the more we did it, the more they were like, yeah, but stuff on Earth H is like boring though when everything goes their way. Like, yeah, I don't think I would want to play there. But so one of the things that comes out of all that is we find out that on Earth H, the post crisis Superman is running for president. And he's talking about corruption on Earth H. And we mentioned that there was this group of xenophobes from some old DC comics called the Superman of 2020. And I can drop a link for that too if you need one. But at any rate, um, something that seems to be implied in those stories is Superman arrests the leader of this group, and then the leader's just in the next comic book again. Um, and so our interpretation of that was a corrupt system that is intentionally releasing these guys for some reason. That the government itself in that comic, the Superman of 2020 comic, which came out around 1980, 1982, somewhere in that ballpark of time, it seems like that government, for some reason, kind of wants these troublemakers doing this for some reason, right? And so the Clark Kent Jr. character is going to Washington to put an end to this. That is his whole plan. And in the way, like the flow of the game, there's this awesome moment where one of the players even said, okay, well, we need to add that to the list of stuff we need to do then. And this was Jesse's husband, by the way. And he's like, so, um, where's my variant from Earth K so he can run for president? And then everybody realizes that's you're referring to the guy who died in the death of Superman. So he can't, right? And it's this moment of like, oh, well crap. And so Whereas the Lara of Earth H kind of had more going on in terms of career, right? And the Lara of Earth K had more going on in terms of family. The irony is both Laras thought the grass was kind of greener on the other side. So the Lara of Earth K is the one who then decides she's going to run for president, which means if she wins, her husband is going to be, I don't know what would be the right term there for first lady. First gentleman? I don't know. At any rate, someone let me know in the comments, what is that term? You get what I'm saying though, right? So we thought that was kind of cool. And that if those two are in the White House and Earth K, that's sort of like taking the Terran Empire idea, where John Redbridge is the emperor, and bringing it down a notch, right? Like kind of toning that down. That's a step in the direction of the real world. It's still that family in the Oval Office, but you get the idea. And by the way, the reason we said it wasn't the original Superman from the Golden Age from Earth H who was going to run for president is because one of the requirements to be president, it's like you got to be over 35, you have to be born in America. He was born on Krypton, so he's not eligible. That's why it had to be about Clark Jr. Um, and I was going to say that would apply to Earth K too, but the both Superman the second and Superman the first on Earth K are both gone now. So yeah, we thought, the next in line is kind of Lara there. We thought that was pretty cool though. We liked the idea of that. So that was sort of interesting that some things are like um parallel, like there's this kind of sense of equilibrium between dimensions, but now the Laras are kind of uh uneven there, because the one Lara is doing what the brother's doing instead of what her counterpart is doing. And then the Lara of Earth um H was like, maybe I need to go talk to the White Lantern and see sort of like if how do I want to put it? Like if he wants to use the split power, basically, that kind of thing. Like she's hoping there'll be some equilibrium there because she feels like she's kind of missing out, that kind of thing. We also talked about the possibility of just taking one of the John Redbridges from Earth K because there's so many of them and just sending him to Earth H, but we didn't do that. We could if we change our mind, but as of now, we didn't do it because again, we wanted Earth H to be kind of like the original characters are not as important. The focus is on actual DC characters and actual Marvel characters. Speaking of Marvel, that was the other thing I was really surprised by was I mentioned during the course of this game session that the Peter Parker of Earth H is alive and owns a company called Parker Industries, and they're into a little bit of everything. And the Peter Parker of Earth K, we went more with the Spider-Girl comics, where he had just become a forensic police officer. He actually lost his leg in a fight with a supervillain and had a prosthetic leg, just kind of like mid shin down. Um, but then when he was trying to do Spider-Man stuff, that artificial leg of his did not have the clinging power. It would not, stick to the wall. But at any rate, so the pretty much the same thing again. They both have a daughter, right? And the one daughter, though, has like a really high up position at Parker Industries. That's the one from Earth H. The one from Earth K, um, she has a kid and stuff like that. So she, again, has more going on in terms of family, but she does not have a lot anything going on career wise. And so then my wife was talking about um founding a Parker Industries on Earth K. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, that she cared about the Spider-Girl character. She's played Spider-Girl on multiple occasions, and so she wanted to establish that. So that was another thing where um one dimension is influencing what's happening in the other dimension. Um I feel like there's more stuff I could say. There was a lot in this game while simultaneously, it was only dialogue. It was not like a big supervillain fight or, that kind of thing. But we're seeing how the two worlds are having things in common. And so this is kind of then foreshadowing, talking about the parallels of the worlds, is we decided that on Earth H, this is the epilogue, while Clark Jr. is running for president and he's at a podium, oh, I left a part out. I'm so sorry. So Clark Jr. was talking about there seem to be bad guys in the government, right? And as they are talking, the John Kent from Earth K mentions a game we ran where there were reptilian shapeshifters had done a body snatcher thing and replaced the leaders of governments and stuff like that, right? And so he's like, did you guys ever catch them on your Earth? But everybody on Earth H is like, are you serious? Like, our government has been infiltrated. So that was part of the picnic conversation. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that. So then in the epilogue, as he is giving his speech, um, a scroll is at this place. And again, I based a lot of this stuff on some of the Captain America movies and some of the Marvel movies. But there's a scroll in the crowd who attacks with a ranged weapon. And so when it hits him, everybody screams, of course, and so on and so forth. But then we see with his he's wearing like a business suit kind of thing. He's doing the classic Superman thing, right? So he's in like the Clark Kent suit, and the chest of the suit is damaged, revealing the symbol. And so the idea is that on Earth H, in this nationally televised live feed, right, in front of the world, the secret is out. So now everybody on Earth H knows who the Kent family really is, that they are the Superman family. And so what I'm hinting at there is that something very similar is about to happen on Earth K, but that's a story for another day, I guess. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I know it was complicated, it was kind of unwieldy. There was a lot of information to pass on from this one. Um, but the takeaway is Clark Jr. from Earth H is going to be president, right? So Laura Kent of Earth K is running for president now on Earth K. Um, yeah, I'll shut up about it for now. Yeah, I hope that you liked it. If so, we would love it if you chose to support the channel by smashing that like button, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Um, and from everybody here associated with the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.